Whew, all right, well, what a morning it was. The car didn't start this morning, and I think it was because Sandra took the trailer on the car on the RAV4 yesterday, and we picked up some of our furniture from a local furniture maker, and we might have actually killed the battery. We have no idea what went wrong, or we might have accidentally left it on, I don't know, but we were supposed to film this morning at 7 a.m. We were supposed to leave. It is now 9, so we were 2 hours behind schedule. And today is actually a special day to shoot too, because we're going to Muddy Fingers Farm. And what's special about it is we're actually presenting them a donation from all of you guys. So they had to turn down some people from their CSA, because the way that their CSA works is that people in need will approach the CSA and they'll pay for half with their SNAP benefits, and the other half Muddy Fingers Farm will raise funds for. But there were so many folks in need for a CSA that they couldn't raise the funds, so we're able to actually provide some of those funds, because 10% of our proceeds from our Google AdSense goes back to the community. And Espoma was able to match it, but we didn't tell them about the match. So we'll be presenting this to them, and it was going to be a really exciting morning. So it was a shame that we couldn't actually make it out, but we are going now, just albeit a little behind schedule. I have a really exciting thing. We were able to double it because we have a partner who will match our AdSense revenue.
That's amazing.
So
wow.
You get to have either double the amount of folks who could do the CSA or put it into next year.
Cool,
CSA.
thank you. That's awesome.
We're really excited to do it. I mean, honestly, it's the viewers who are able to make these things happen for us. So.
Nice. And we worked so hard to find low-income shares. We went to we went to the WIC office where they give out WIC checks. We went to the office of the aging. We went we went to Head Start and spoke. We could not get people to sign up for the low-income. The hard part was finding low-income CSA members. Then we realized people just couldn't understand paying advance, even if it's half price. So we realized people have to be able to pay weekly, and that made a big difference.
I see. So, and see, what I liked about your program, at least from what I saw on the Instagram post, is that people do have to elect to do the CSA.
They do.
And so, but what was preventing them was not being able to pay. They couldn't pay all up front, but they could do weekly. So there were people who probably wanted to, but couldn't do the
I think too, just understanding, I think if you're so food insecure, you can't afford to buy into a farm's risk, which is part of what you do in a CSA.
Yeah.
So that made a big difference when people could just pay weekly. It was oh, okay. Yeah, and then people can pay with food stamps. That's made it easier, but it still has been a little bit hard to recruit people. And this year, people just keep coming up and saying oh, I'm oh, this is great. It's nice to have people understand and be interested in joining. And I posted that post because I had to turn someone away, and I was I can't believe I just turned someone away. It's never had to happen.
Right.
So to have people come out and join and have a bunch of people donate, it's really nice. We've never had a low income fall and winter CSA before, just because we haven't really been able to. And this year we have enough funds from people's donations to do that. So it's going to be nice.
So do you think that part of the reason why there is, more people are knowing now about your CSA, was it because you pounded the pavement for so long, or is it also a confluence of food prices rising in
I
general.
think it's just like 2 years of COVID stuff and, you know, the unemployment. And I just think it's like food prices are high and gas prices are high and people are just feeling the pinch. And if they were getting by before, maybe I think now they're like.
I actually really like the idea to be able to say, I want to elect to have like healthy fruits and vegetables.
Right.
That's something. And the fact that you do have to pay half of it. You have kind of skin in the game, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that's why I was like, okay, it's not like you're trying to shove kohlrabi and kale down someone's throat who doesn't want it, and then you're just going to have food waste. But this is like folks who want, you know, fresh, healthy.
It's half price.
Yeah, and it's half price.
It's half price. So it's like, okay, well, hopefully that makes it easier for people.
And more achievable.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting because you wouldn't have known, like, unless you went through the whole system and be like, hey, why aren't people wanting this? And then figuring out, oh, paying on a weekly basis when people are living paycheck to paycheck, like that starts to make sense. And you don't know unless you start to do those things.
When we did it though, you know, the first year, which was years ago, we learned like for some people it's like they don't even have pots and pans. You know, it's like the problem is like even deeper than that. Like they just don't have a kitchen that has the supplies you need to prepare food. You like really realize like how big of a problem it is if you've grown up in a family that doesn't cook, you don't know how to cook, you don't have pots and pans, or, like you don't have a kitchen that's stocked with the basic supplies you need to turn fresh food into meals. It's like, I'd like to do a little more teaching too, like I'm hoping to, I would always thought it'd be nice to do some, like this is how you cook this food, because I think people think it's got to be a big deal, and I'm like, you can saute like any food.
This is a side story, but like when my parents split and then we were kind of like without a house for a while, and we didn't have a refrigerator for like a good year.
Wow.
And so we used a cooler. If we had something fresh, we had to eat it right away.
Right.
You know, it wasn't the thing that we could store meat. There's less of a safety net now.
Right.
And so, you know, even folks who might want the CSA might be in a situation that could be similar, and like, you know, but anyway, I mean, I applaud what you're doing. I mean, you can't obviously solve all the issues, but that really resonated with me, and we were looking for a way to kind of give back, and I think it came up at the right time and right on my Instagram feed, so I'm glad you posted it.
Yeah.
So I hope you don't have to turn anybody away, and that helps a little bit. But how did you get started?
So we both interned on the same farm down in Pennsylvania, and we realized that this is what we wanted to do. Our start on our family's land. So that was a good way for us to get our feet wet and get kind of established here in the area.
And were you just helping like the family with the product, or did you grow your own products on the farm?
Yeah, I mean, we started the business for ourselves.
I see. Okay, I got it.
He provided us land.
Oh, that's perfect.
A lot of equipment, but I mean, he had been doing hay for years, but that
was the extent of it.
Vegetables.
Yeah. I mean, it's wonderful that you had that resource, you know, to be able to start somewhere and get your feet wet.
Yeah.
And then when you started to grow your own stuff there on his land, were you able then to take it to farmers markets and things like that? Is that how you got your start?
Right, that's kind of how we got our start.
I see,
Once
okay.
we got established in the farmers markets in the area, and once we realized that we wanted to, you know, find our own place, we were like, well, do we want to completely move somewhere else, or do we want to stay here where we've already have our CSA established, we already have you know, spots in the farmers markets, so we decided just to stay in the area.
And I'm curious, what did you start with when you started to use your family's land?
We farmed about an acre.
Yeah.
And he had a tractor with a tiller.
Yeah.
And that was about it. But I think that's the beautiful thing about farming. Like when we met, we went to this farming conference, and this lady really inspired me because she said, I started my farm with $500 and a shovel. And it's like, it's so true, because the plants want to grow. It's just about planting them at the right time. You know, it's like, it's not rocket science. Like everything is working with you to make food, you know? So it's like, it's mostly about your planning and your, you know, your systems to make things work. I just thought that was so inspiring because it's so true. Like, yeah, you can start with very little. That was pretty cool to hear. It's like, okay, and she had gone on to build like this great farm. You know, it's like a little bit at a time.
Yes. So when you started with like the tractor and the tiller, did you like start with like tomatoes, or what did you do any kind of like market research? Did you go to the farmer's market and say, oh, what's there? Is there a hole in the market, or do you just like went for it? And
we knew that we wanted to grow a wide variety of vegetables. We knew we wanted to have a CSA, so for that we knew you have to grow like a little bit of everything. That's what we did. That's what we started with, and we're still doing basically the same thing. We're just doing it grown, you know, little by little over the years, but still kind of the same mixture.
at one point we started tracking the profitability, and we dropped some of the least profitable things, increased the more profitable things. You know, it's like, and every land is different. Like I think sometimes it's like, oh, you know, I don't know, some things grow better for you, and it's not, you know, you don't really understand why, but you're like, oh, well, I can grow that fine, so that's what we'll grow. Yeah.
And this is the first place that you got after your family's land?
Actually,
then?
we rented for 2 years. For 1 year, we rented an apartment and land, sort of in Montour Falls, sort of midway between here and there.
Yep, familiar
We
with
didn't
that.
really want to be this far north. We really wanted to be like between Corning, Ithaca, and Elmira, like in that triangle. And Hector's certainly way north of that. But we saw this property, and it was like, somebody actually called us about this property. We had a sign up in the local, at the time, natural food store. And the lady was like, we have 20 acres, about half of it's clear. There's an old farmhouse and a barn. It was like, she was like reading our checklist. We were like, I guess we should go look at this property. And I mean, Hector's so beautiful. We love to live here. It's like such a great place to be. And we really are glad to be here. But it wasn't like quite in the triangle where we wanted to farm. So it does make the drive to Corning and Elmira like 45 minutes or almost an hour, to Ithaca 35. You know, so it's like, but it's okay.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, even from our experience, you just have to sometimes go a little further out to get, you know, something of what you want. And it seems like and it's also nice that you put like a classified ad up in natural, and somebody who's like,
They
hey, I
called
have
us.
this.
I know, it's amazing.
And maybe it was somebody who wanted to see it farmed, you know, wanted to see it used.
We bought it from some vegans. I think they were psyched to see like, you know, a bunch of, you know, a vegetable farm come into their neighborhood. It was
That's
like,
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the nice thing was it wasn't on the market. And at the time, it's like, you know, our budget was, you know, like 100,000 at the most. We wanted 5 acres and a house. And so it was like, every morning we'd check the MLS for anything with 5 acres and a house, you know, it was like, and then we'd like drive by it and see it, you know, so it was like to not have to hurry and decide like, do it, because it wasn't perfect. This is the field we're standing in was the only cleared area. The rest of the farm was like 25-year-old like grown up pasture.
Brushy.
It was brushy, so we did clear. If we go to the other fields, we cleared all that land, which isn't ideal. So it's like, you know, we had to think a lot about like, is it going to be enough land? Is it going to be worth the work? You know, but something felt right. This is the only old, like we saw a lot of mobile homes and 100-year-old houses that like that was in our price range, you know, and this was the only house we went in where Matthew could stand in the basement, you know, and for a house
Yeah,
built in
you were tall.
1850, I was like, oh man, this must be the house for us. But
You're like, do you know how many doors I hit my head on? You know, like looking at other homes.
Right.
yeah. So it was like, I don't know. It was, yeah, we're happy we ended up here. So
Amazing. Well, give us a little tour. Show us what you're growing and what
Yes.
you've been like really successful with. What people absolutely love in your CSA boxes. I'm sure it's like people come back and say, more of this.
yeah, it might be. So this tunnel has got some tomatoes and some green beans in it. So this is a nice looking spot to go. So we grow rainbow cherry tomatoes. It's real fun to grow and pick and eat them. This first variety is actually green when they're ripe, so it's the least impressive looking one.
They're green when they're ripe?
Yeah, so
Oh, you could have fooled me.
I know, right? So I picked them yesterday, so let's see if I can come up with any that
And these are huge.
Yeah, they're nice big ones. This
Wait,
one's
are these considered cherry tomatoes?
Yeah.
They're
they are
massive.
Yeah, this one is it'll be get a little riper, but
Wow.
They get nice and big. They like it in here.
yeah, they really do. And the hands are
Oh, wow.
are really big. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm gonna find another ripe one because like I said, I picked them pretty hard yesterday, but you'll have to share. There you go.
Yeah, how do you know when they're ripe, actually?
That's what I was hoping to be able to show you because it's kind of fun. They blush like yellow, so you'll see like these unripe ones are sort of whitish green.
White, yeah.
And then when they turn ripe, of course, it's always the top one on the cluster first. This
Yeah.
part will blush sort of a yellow green. This isn't quite there yet.
Wow.
So, you
so
know.
nuanced.
Yeah. I was thinking
What
yesterday
kind
I
of
was
cherry
picking
tomato
them.
is this?
It's called sugar.
Sun green.
Sun green.
Sun
thank you.
green.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's a fun thing. I think the main thing on our farm is our goal is to be a 2-person farm, and we farm 2.5 acres, which I think is like right at the amount of land that 2 people can farm and not be crazy and not work all the time.
Yeah.
So we sort of walk this fine line where you embrace an imperfection, where you're like, you know, it could be tidier if they're, you know, it's like you see some farms that are so tidy.
Yeah.
But it's like,
This you allow to
Yep,
get a little
yep.
weedy. And
We'll
is it
just
because
weed eat it.
you're 2 people, or is it because, hey, this is actually good for beneficial insects? Like, what's your
It just hasn't
thought?
been mowed. Yeah, It's probably on my list for later today.
Okay.
yeah, it's sort of, that's sort of the blend is like, it's also not economically damaging.
Yeah.
You know, like it could be much tidier, but it's not hurting the tomatoes to have some grass and things growing in. Yeah, so that's the fine line we always walk between like, in a perfect world, it would be like this. But it's like, our goal is to be a 2-person farm, so this is how it's going to be. You know, it's like,
I really love how practical and sensible you are with
you have to
this.
sort of let go of something. So
Yeah. I also like how you're like, I wouldn't have even be able to say what is a 2-person farm. You know, like how do you figure out what's? I guess you could figure out quickly how much is too much, but then there's efficiencies that you could do to probably maximize things to a certain degree. Sometimes it's not all about efficiency that we want. That's not all about farming. You know, part of farming is not always necessarily about efficiency, but to have discovered what that is over the years, you know, how much is too much is interesting.
And that's what we do have some people who do working shares. We're not without help, but pretty much all the production we do on our own. So on harvest morning, we have a crew of people. Some of them, many of them gave birth to us who help us. And then we have other people who do working shares as well.
Nice.
But like all the planting, weeding, cultivating. Actually, this year we have a working share helping with farm work one morning a week. So it is a fine balance between like, we live in a rural enough area, we feel nervous about hiring someone and depending on a third person for our business. So it's like, you know, you just try to decide. And this year being a dry year, a drought is really much harder. You work like twice as much, just in terms of like you spend a lot of time managing water, like starting irrigation, switching irrigation over. Everything we have is on drip tape, so you can see like this is the drip lines. Like every foot or so, there's a little tiny hole where water bubbles out. You can just barely see them. Like here's one, and they do a pretty good job. And then this is a 1-inch line. This field's just on 1 inch. All our other fields are on 2-inch lines. So this all connects back to our pond, and then water comes through the lines and waters. But it's like you're always checking. Like a dog will step on here and knock it off, or a person, or you'll mow it. And, so just it's time consuming, and adding drip tapes and moving them. So I love that I'm standing like a foot below you, exacerbating our height difference. Everyone here is so tall, and I'm standing on the bottom. So, yeah.
So are you, now, you do things organically, but you're not certified organic, or how?
We are certified.
Oh, you're certified organic, okay.
Yeah, for years we weren't. We've always grown organically, but I don't know, maybe 5 years ago we decided to get certified. When we started growing seeds, like at the farmers markets, we always just had a sign that said like, no herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, or other junk. And like for a lot of people that was enough.
Yeah.
Because obviously we don't want to spray poison. This is our home. Our dogs are here, we're here, we work here. It's like, so for us, we've always grown organically, but to sell seeds, you can't, being certified gives you a better price.
That's good. So that means you have to have somebody come out here and check periodically and kind of fill those little check boxes and everything along those lines.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, let's just see some other. You have more tomatoes over here.
So this field's got all of our tomatoes and things in it. This tunnel's kind of fun, actually. You can see right through. So we grew peas this spring on this netting. Yeah. And putting the netting in is obviously a certain amount of labor. So the peas started to die, sadly. And so we just planted pole beans. And you can see we pulled the peas as we planted them. So it's not pretty right now, but those peas will just sort of fade into the background as a canopy of beans covers them, and then we'll pick beans from there.
So the peas you had already picked, and now
they started to die off.
Succession planting, and you're doing the pole beans.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it saved us having to install another trellis, and we didn't have to till the beds. We try to reduce our tillage as much as we can, and that's a nice reduced tillage technique. If you can just replant into a bed that's just been planted.
And can you plant peas and beans there again next year, or do you try to transition crops out?
We do mix it up. It's a little harder in our hoop houses because we only grow certain crops in our hoop houses.
Right.
A fairly limited variety. So, but our hoop houses most of them are mobile.
Yeah.
We can move them. We move them every couple of years.
That one we just walked by is not, but all of our other tunnels move.
Oh, okay.
But we do try to rotate the crops as much as we can also.
Yeah.
We grow a few different crops that we like, and
for ourselves.
And then we do grow seeds for seed company.
Like maybe 6 or 8 varieties a year. The challenge is you have to have a certain separation distance. So it'd be challenging to produce all your own seeds. Some farms are doing more of that. Yeah. But we grow about 40 or 50 varieties a year. So it's like we might grow 3 or 4 for ourselves. and then 6 or 8 for seed companies, and then buy in the rest.
Yeah. I'm just curious for like somebody who's a local organic grower. I mean, you see all these larger geopolitical issues happening where I can't get fertilizer, diesel prices may have risen or whatever. Like, how does that affect somebody who's like a local grower who might, so you might use diesel in your tractor, but to go to the farmer's market, you have to travel a little bit further. But how is it actually affecting you?
Pretty small
Yeah.
percentage, I think. I mean, yes, I guess we're spending more on, probably the gas is, what affects us more than the diesel price, because we don't use that much diesel really.
Yeah.
We use a lot more gas just going back and forth to market, but
That is the disadvantage of being outside the triangle,
Yeah.
It's a longer drive to market.
Yeah.
We were just discussing that yesterday, because yesterday our propane tank was removed from our house. We've been sort of slowly working on electrifying everything, and we got an induction stove recently and had installed. So yesterday was like kind of momentous to see the propane tank leave. But that said, like for our farm business, our equipment is all gas powered or diesel powered still, except I guess the prone meter is solar powered. But so we'd love to drive an electric van to market, but they're like not even on the market yet. So it's like it'll be
an electric tractor.
Right. I think the problem is our farm about 2 acres. It's like we don't use the tractor that much. It's not. I mean, it's an important part of our farm business, but it's not like people who are using it 60 hours a week. I mean, we might use it an hour a week or 3 hours. I don't know. Whatever. It's like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting about it, and the reason why I asked the question, is that it kind of goes to show you that it's like there's you have food resiliency here when you have like local markets that are small, that are going at shorter distances. It might be a longer distance for you because you're not within triangle, but you're not bringing in like synthetic fertilizers and dropping in a ton of like, that on the land. That there's an ability to be able to be more, I guess, resilient, at the end of the day.
I feel like my vision is like, I'd love to have like lots and lots of little local farms that feed 100 families each, because that's probably about what we feed, is like maybe 100 families each. Yeah, maybe a little more, but yeah. So it's like, boy, I think that's what we need, is a lot of little local farms. I mean, big farms have a place too, but for people's vegetables and meat and eggs, it's like, I would love to see a cluster of community in which that happens. So it's nice to be a part of that. We have 12 blocks on our farm, and we basically have a 12-year rotation through them, in terms of different crop families and helping reduce disease and insect problems. That said, a lot of new insects have been building up. So this is our allium section. That's onions, leeks, shallots, garlic's in a separate place, but they're also alliums. So under these covers are leeks. The last few years, there's been a new leek pest called allium leaf miner, and it actually is a small insect that mines inside the leaves, so it burrows into the plant. And the last few years in the fall, the leeks look like there's a bunch of flax seeds in the stalk.
Oh.
And that's the allium leaf miner larva, which it turns out people don't love eating larvae. I don't know why not, in their food. Right. So we've started trying to cover them. So last year we covered them with an insect exclusion netting, and this year they're under some row cover right now. It's a fly that lays eggs on them, so if you keep the fly off, then you shouldn't get the larva. So,
is it like an invasive, or was it just a native here that kind of?
No, I think it's an invasive. I don't remember where it's from. And then these are onions, and you can see like they're starting. The ones on the right are our earliest onions, and then these are our storage onions. So this is like a yellow storage onion. And then here is the sweet onions. You can see they're just about starting to die down, so pretty soon we'll be harvesting them.
And the idea with laying down some of this geotextile materials to put down the weeds, right?
Okay. So we use a permanent bed system on our farm, so we're generally planning to mow the paths. That said, onions and squash, we found that they are really hard to keep up with. Like the onions, for the opposite reason, the onions don't produce much shade, so they don't inhibit weeds very much. And the squash is the opposite. It inhibits weeds quite well with the large leaves, but they run so fast that it's really hard to get a nice clean squash field. So we found when we switched to this we'll do like large section of this and then plant 4 or 5 beds and then another large section. It's really helped us to have much tidier crops. You can see there's a few weeds in there, but mostly it's just onions. And in the squash section, the same thing. So that's been really great to get a really clean crop.
Great.
Yeah, so this is our fall planting of carrots. There'll be storage carrots for the winter. So we'll sell these carrots like from November right on through to, next March or April even.
Yeah.
So we planted them right before we were supposed to get a big rain, and then unfortunately our farm did not get any rain.
No rain, no rain. It's been not reliable this year.
Yeah.
Not like last year. Last year was a lot of
very
rain.
wet, yeah. So we in 2020 it was very dry, and we had a second irrigation pond built. We watered from 3 neighbors' ponds, and we said we never want to be in this position again. So this is the first year that our first pond is empty, and we've moved to the second pond, so we're so glad we have it.
Wow, okay, so you prepared in the last drought. Yeah.
I think part of the resiliency is just figuring out what your weak spots are and planning for them, you know? So having only 1 pond, it wasn't enough. So we need 2 ponds. It used to seem like it would be enough, but it's not anymore. So, the carrots we hand watered until they germinated, and you can see they're tiny, but looking nice. And that water yesterday, we got about a ½ inch of rain last night, and that was much needed. That'll really help. These guys will take off. I would say that's sort of a make or break rain event for them.
How did it work last year? Because we had like a delayed winter. Did you find yourself collecting up through like end of November?
Into December.
Into
December. It was so warm in December. Yeah, it was really something.
Yeah, crazy. You're like, should we put a 3rd crop in?
Actually, it's the light by that time of year.
Yeah,
the lack of light.
Yeah.
It's not things stay alive fine, but we a few years ago switched to only growing pole beans because it stinks to bend over and pick beans for a long time. So this is our earliest planting, which is starting to look a little run down, but and behind us you can see that a couple more plantings coming on. So we put our very earliest one in the hoop houses, and then this was our earliest outdoor field planting.
I love that you already recognized that you wanted to be farmers, that you wanted to do this, and I love when you say it stinks having to bend down. It's kind of like you're age-proofing things.
Well, this is our 20th year farming.
Oh my gosh! So, congratulations!
I feel like, we're starting to think a lot more about that than we did when we were 20-somethings. So
yeah. You have to bend down a lot more.
Yeah, well, my back is always iffy. You know, so we just do whatever we can to save our back and our knees.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we'll have to look at the prone weeder. It's very fun. So this is celeriac. Have you ever eaten?
Oh,
yeah.
It's my celeriac, like soup and mash is like my go-to meal.
Yum!
In the winter.
Yum! But you can see they're just starting to like make little tiny celeriacs at the bottom.
Yeah.
Hardly, but just starting.
Yeah.
So we try to transplant everything we can because we're a 2-person farm. We want to put a big plant in the ground as ready as it can to take off. So we like to use hay mulch. You can see these celeriacs are planted on hay. And then you can see like in our permanent bed system, there's grassy strip that we mow between the beds. And then we also use, like you said, a lot of this landscape fabric, geotextile kind of stuff. So this is, these are husk cherries. Have you ever had them? Yeah. So they're just, haven't seen any yet, but pretty soon I think we'll be seeing the first ones.
Yeah.
We learned years ago to grow them on a hill with a wide piece of landscape fabric, and that way the ripe fruits fall and they roll down the hill, and all of them are at the bottom of the hill to pick. It's so much easier to pick them.
Excellent tips. Yep. Excellent tips.
So that's been a handy thing to do.
And then you have some chard over here.
Yes, this unfortunately was not, the water lines to these were not working, and we didn't realize. So right now our chard is quite sad. We're hoping with some rain, and now that it's actually getting irrigated, that they'll bounce back and we'll be picking some. But
you can see some shiny new.
To me, it still looks edible.
Usually it's like, chard is a crop that we love to grow. Usually they're
like this big.
Yeah, I see.
So for us, it's a great disappointment.
Yeah.
But yeah. You can see some plantings of carrots here, a few weeds happening in them, but boy, that's parsley again.
And these were planted when?
The label says 525. I think that says.
So back in May.
Yeah. So that was probably maybe our 4th planting of carrots, something like that. We do some, like Matthew said, seeds growing. So this is a pepper that we're growing for a seed company, and you can see it's grown under insect exclusion netting. And then we'll harvest the fruits when they're red, and then we'll cut the seed out.
The netting to prevent any cross-pollination.
I see.
With our other peppers that we're growing on the farm.
And when you were farming, did the seed companies approach you, or did you like approach seed companies and say, "Hey, we could grow for you"?
A few years ago, we thought we decided we wanted to get into, make seed growing, at least a small part of our business. So we approached them. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I mean, it's good for people who want to get into farming and to figure out, well, what are the many different ways that I could actually diversify?
I think for us, like one thing seems like it could be a good older farmer job, you know, because you don't harvest seed crops nearly as often. Like the CSA schedule is pretty rigorous. Like we're harvesting 3 mornings a week. And that's it. Your schedule is set by that, you know.
Yeah.
And so seed, you might harvest 3 times a season, you know. So it's like, it's not as urgent. I mean, it has to be done when it's time, but there's a window that's much larger than for CSA farming. So we just thought it's a good thing to have our toes in. Maybe we'll expand it as we get older, or we'll see, but it's nice to have another outlet. So
Yeah.
I love growing peppers too, because you grow them till they're really, really ripe, and then you just take the seed and then I freeze or dry all the red peppers. So like every morning I have red peppers with my breakfast, you know, because it's like, oh man, it's nice that the thing you want is not the thing that you sell for market, you know, and you can't sell them
makes sense.
pre-cut like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's different. But for us, like, we preserve so many peppers, so it's really fun to.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
It's like you almost want to grow the things that you know you're going to eat a lot of.
Right.
So if peppers is what you like, then
But not every
peppers-
seed crop is like that, though. Like
Yeah.
tomatoes, you like get almost rotten till the seed is ripe. So, you know, it's nice that we happen to grow one that it's like, it's in that sweet spot where you can eat the food and you can have the seeds. That's pretty nice.
So now that I know that this is like your 20th year doing this, and you knew you wanted to do a CSA right from the get-go, how has the CSA expanded and or contracted over those 20 years?
I mean, we leveled off probably 10 years ago, I would say.
Meaning you can't take on any more because you have capacity.
We're comfortable. Although,
Yeah.
actually, I mean, I don't think until this year we ever considered ourselves actually full with the CSA.
Yeah.
You know, we always felt like we could take on some more, but now we're up above 70 members, which is really, that's where I'm pretty
Like
happy
70,
now.
75 is
Yeah.
sort of the spot that we feel like we can do a good job at.
Yeah.
Like our first year, I think we started off with like just 5 shares, you know, just kind of slowly.
It's funny, our
Right.
first year though, every time we went to a party, we'd give someone our card and we'd come home with a CSA. Remember, like it was wild. We were like, wow, this is great. We're like meeting new people and we're getting CSA shares. But it hasn't been like that for a long time. Like it
Yeah.
was so interesting to see that. Like it was literally like every time we went to a party, someone would say like, oh, what do you, and we'd tell them and they would like, oh, I'm interested. We're like, wow, it's easy to.
Wow.
It's
that's
not always
good.
been.
Yeah.
Like in 2020, everyone we know was like, our CSA is completely full. We have this huge waiting list. And our CSA in 2020 was like the smallest it's been in a while. We're
Yeah.
like, what? Like it's very strange because nationwide it was like every CSA is full and ours was not. We're like, I don't know what's going on
You
with
need to
this.
go back to those parties and pound the pavement again.
But this year, like Matthew said, we are.
Yeah.
We're full, so it's like okay, interesting.
Good. Amazing.
Yeah. So.
And then is this more celeriac?
So we grow a little bit of celery as well.
Oh, celery, okay.
And you can see that it looks very similar. The celery
Yeah.
is just a little ahead, actually. This is soybeans that we grow for a seed company too next to it. They have these sweet little cute flowers. Actually, there might not be any left on it. They're like a really pretty little flower that you'd never see. Actually, maybe
Is it
they're
more
all-
like a little, is it similar more to like a pea flower or?
even they're a little more delicate and they're like sort of like a double pea flower.
Yeah.
I think we're all on to seed now. I
Okay.
can't show you, but they're really pretty.
Yeah.
So they're small and a thing that you would never see when you're driving by a 20-acre field of soybeans, you know.
Yeah.
But then we've got potatoes. They're starting to look a little careworn. And then we grow a lot of things under this insect exclusion netting. This is a spicy greens mix, and to keep the flea beetles, which are a terrible pest, off. This year it's interesting. It's been so dry, as discussed, that this was a section of really nice cover crop that we flail mowed. That's a mower that kind of grinds it up really fine.
Yeah.
And then we just made a subsoil through the bed. So like actually I think you can tell best on the winter squash. They haven't filled out as much. Come over one more row here. But so we just ran our subsoiler down the middle and made like a channel here. And then we just put the plants in the channel and the drip tape fits right on top of the plants. And this was a way that we were able to manage it being too dry to till.
Yeah.
And so this is the first time we've grown them like this. We're really interested to see how weedy it becomes. We mulch the paths with hay.
How much mulch of hay? Like, is it like a couple inches or?
Yeah.
Most of the mulch in here, I mean, we did add some, but most of it is from the rye that we mowed.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the cover crop that you just.
we added,
Yeah.
like that stuff.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
all
In place.
grown in place.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how weedy it becomes just because it'd been so dry, you know, we had that advantage.
Yeah.
And now that it's rained some, I'll be interested. I mean, you can see some grass coming, but I'm hoping these crops will smother anything that's coming up. So,
Right.
Yeah,
and then,
just doing it no-till really helps make sure not that many more weeds come up because you're not disturbing
bringing
the
them up to
soil.
the surface.
And it also is, I mean, we have been for a while now, we've been trying to do as much of our crops no-till as possible. We haven't been totally not that successful at it sometimes. You know, it's I don't know. We find it challenging to do, especially like the direct seeded crops, no-till. But we know it's better for the soil. We know it's better for moisture retention, organic matter, better for holding carbon in the soil and all that. But it is challenging to. We found it challenging, even though there's lots of famous farmers now that are doing it no-till.
But you find that like if you start it and put the little plug in,
A big plant is for us the sweet spot.
that is good for no-till, but direct seeding is a
Well,
challenge.
you think of the difference of putting like a carrot seed in
Well,
versus like a plant. It's like, oh man, what's going to be
It's
more
already
successful?
off to the races. Yeah. It's already out of the starting
It seems
blocks.
like everybody who's doing, you know, just all no-till, it's either, you know, they're importing a lot of compost, or they have a lot of animals and they're making their own compost, and they're using that as, you know, basically a mulch on top of all the beds. Is not being able to quite make that work.
Yeah.
There's not very much certified organic compost around too, and so to do it, we would need to buy. There's only one place we could buy it
Expensive.
from.
It's a lot of labor putting down that much compost on every bed, but so we're still trying to do as much no-till as possible, but
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you don't have to feel like you have to confess. You know what I mean? Like part of it is just like really tweaking, like you said. Like everything's really site specific, and you know, it's neat to hear you tweaking and learning and saying, hey, you know, just because this worked for someone else, it doesn't mean it's going to work for you, especially given the methods or how much rain you get or how much you don't. Even on the type of crop, like you said, like the squash likes to smother the weeds, but you know, something that the alliums, you know, don't give good cover. So something might work in those regards, which is interesting. I would also imagine that if you're going to the farmers markets, that you could converse with other farmers as well. Have you learned a lot along the way, or is it mostly just you tweaking in your own fields?
well, I mean, most of our ideas that we come up with are not our ideas. We
Yeah.
learn them from other farmers or
Right.
you know, other, you know, publications that the farmers have written. So
Yeah.
I guess we've come up with a few things on our own, but most of our efficiencies and, you know, ideas and things that we do now are just, you know, just learning from other farmers.
Yeah. Under this cover, we're taking part. Anytime a researcher asks us if we'll take part in a trial, we're like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
So they're studying if you can. There's cucumber beetles. Actually, if you look, I'm sure you'll see some. They're a little yellow beetle
the stripies?
Yep, with the black
Yeah.
stripes.
Here they are.
Yep.
Here it is.
Yep.
Not the honeybee, but
Yep, and usually right in the blossom you'll find
Yeah.
them. But so cucumber beetles can be a problem, and they also spread a bunch of diseases. And so they're doing some experiments with growing them under netting and excluding the cucumber beetles. The problem being that then you have to provide pollinators inside. Because these are insect pollinated plants.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So this is the second year we've taken part in this trial. So cucumbers and squash under here, and a hive of bumblebees, and the bumblebees pollinate.
It's amazing. Like, look how big the cucumbers are under there versus the ones out
yeah,
there.
it is. So
Yeah.
this trial, I would say, is a general success, I would imagine.
That said, the cost of the bumblebees and the inconvenience, like when we agreed to do it, Matthew said, I will not harvest in here.
Yeah.
But if you want to do all the harvesting, yes. And which makes sense. I mean, for him, so I mean.
You're on all fours
You
on
can,
there.
it's stretchy, so you can, you know, it
Yeah.
goes this high, so you can sort of stand, but it's
Yeah.
not, you know.
It's not ideal.
It's not ideal, but the cost of the bumblebees, I think, makes it not economically feasible. I mean, we're glad to take part in the research, but I just can't see it paying for itself as a growing method. But it's so interesting to be a part of research that, you know.
I mean, you never know. This is the start of something that might result into something else. You know what I mean? It's like you kind of got to, you know, work the wheel to see if it, you know, and then tweak it after a while.
And you can't deny, like when you look at the things growing outside the tunnel, the ones inside look nicer. They're, you know, the edges aren't chewed by any kind of cucumber beetles. The plants look great.
And I mean, I know this would be extra metal, but you could technically make this a little bit higher.
It's true.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we could convert one of our hoop houses.
Hoop houses into a netted,
the cucumbers in there.
Yeah. The netting is quite expensive though too, so that, I mean, but it's interesting to see them, like you say, work through it. So the hive is there underneath that laundry basket to keep them dry.
And they don't seem to mind, right? They like stay in there and they're like happy.
They seem okay, yeah.
Not that.
I mean, you go in there and they're not like mad.
Yeah.
The ones last year were kind of grumpy. There was one that would chase me. But this year I haven't been bothered by them.
I mean, this kale.
Yeah, right? This is the nicest kale we've ever grown. I mean, we grow good kale usually, but this is the nicest kale we've ever grown
Might
for
take
sure.
this kale to prom with me.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a variety that's new to us this year, this red one, and it's really, years ago, they've worked on the breeding, and this is a nice variety. Years
Yeah.
ago, we grew a red one that got like this tall, tiny little leaves. You took like 30 of them to make a bunch, you know, it was like,
Probably just we've improved our soil since then.
but I think this is an improved variety too, though.
What kind of variety do you know?
Red boar.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I
Red
think it's
boar.
red boar, yeah.
Okay.
And then, yeah, so then you can see we've got green as well. That's
Yeah.
our main squeeze. So yeah, these, I don't know, the mulch, they must be getting irrigated well because they're looking great.
Yeah, and you have
So-
them kind of bermed up here too.
Yep.
So
And you can see these were with hay mulch in the spring. We,
Yep.
you know, rolled hay out and then we plant those.
and these are all old apple trees, huh?
Actually, these, this is our wedding orchard. When we got married, we asked for gift certificates for fruit trees.
Really?
At the time, we had just lost access to my uncle's land and we didn't have a place, so we got fruit gift certificates, and so we planted these. This is our wedding orchard.
Amazing.
So the orchard actually is a management strategy. We just mow once a year. We like to provide lots of habitat for beneficial insects in there. Over there, we can walk that way if we want. We've got a tunnel, and then we've got a bunch of seeds growing for a seed company. But yeah, and then this is potatoes. They're hilled, but starting to get a little weedy.
How do you harvest your potatoes? Like, what's the process?
So glad you asked that.
So this year we've dug them all by hand.
Wow. That's a lot of work.
We purchased just a single row, you know,
Potato
attachment for
digger.
potato harvester.
We haven't
Yeah.
used it yet. We bought it in the spring, so we're psyched about that.
So it just basically comes in and kind of ruffles up the.
Yeah, it comes in and kind of digs into the soil.
Yeah.
And hopefully, brings all the potatoes up to the surface.
That's
and
great.
Shakes them out a little bit.
You still have to pick them up off the ground.
Sure,
But
yeah.
there's
It
ones you
exposes them.
don't, but the one
Yeah.
we got is pretty basic.
Well, good for you.
Yeah,
I mean,
so we're
again,
psyched.
that's like one of those things where you said potatoes are over there and potatoes here, and I'm like, that's a lot of potatoes.
It is, yeah. But people love potatoes, so
Yeah.
what can you do?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this, yeah.
And then you
So-
have some herbs. Is this something that you just kind of plant in between to get beneficials, or?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
just kind of threw those in there this spring
Yeah.
just because we had some extra room in the bed.
And the dill and cilantro, both the
Basil,
insects just
dill.
love.
Oh, I love the smell.
Yeah.
And this is a host plant for some of the swallowtails, right? So
It's really interesting because one year we bought this beneficial insect mix, and in the spring I sold, I was like, I can't wait to sell people beneficial insect mix plants to bring home. But it was so interesting because it was all like herbs. Like I
Yeah.
was thinking it'd be flowers, but it was like all herbs and like mustard greens, like
Yeah.
greens in that family. I was like, oh, this is so weird because I was thinking it'd be flowers, but then I realized the insects don't care. Like this is the flowers the insects like.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's interesting because to gardeners they were like, what is this? And I was like, well, it's a beneficial insect mix. And they were like, oh, but it wasn't what I expected.
Yeah.
But it is true. You see those things often are just covered with insects.
yeah.
This is the bed of carrots we're harvesting right now. You can see there's a big gap in the middle, but
Right.
super psyched. These are parsnips in the next bed.
Oh, okay. So these you let go to the first frost, or how do you?
We generally do.
Yeah.
And this parsnips we actually grew the seed for, so it's pretty fun to. We've been selecting for straightness and long, and
Yeah.
So it's pretty fun to see. Some years of selection being reflected back in what we're harvesting. So it's pretty cool.
And so the whole thing for folks who don't know parsnips, because I talked to my grandmother, I was like, how come you've never cooked parsnips? She's like, oh, I hate them. I said, did you ever let them last to the first frost? And she's like, no. But that's where
They're
the
sweet,
sweetness
yeah.
comes from,
Yeah,
right? Because
yeah.
it would be too...
The thing that's challenging actually though is our summer CSA season. It goes through October, and it used to be like the last 2 weeks we'd have had a frost mid-October, but we generally haven't had a frost anymore in the 20 years we've been farming by
Right.
the last week of October. So we generally do start to, we also have a fall and winter CSA, and they of course feature prominently in that, but it's interesting because it's like we do in a perfect world like them to get a good hard frost before we harvest them. But if we actually wait till we have a frost, then people don't get them at the
Right.
summer
We like
CSA.
Some of them in the ground over the winter. And they do just fine.
Would
And
it
then we harvest them in the spring.
in the spring? Wow.
And they're,
Really nice.
you know that they're
Yeah.
That's great. So even through the freeze in the winter, they will survive and they'll be like fresh. It's almost as if they're in. Now, my other question then is, then can you remove them and put them in a freezer or no? Or like a little.
I mean, that's what we'll do.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll harvest most of these in October and put them into cold storage.
Yeah.
We usually like November, once the
Yeah.
summer CSA is over,
We'll leave some of them until the spring, and we'll harvest them and put them in the cooler, and so that we'll have them for the early part of our summer CSA.
And you can't wait too long, like usually March or April, because they're biennial, so they start to make flowers.
Right.
So it's like, once you see them starting to send a flower shoot up, you're like, oh, that's too late. I have to, stay on top of when to harvest them.
But if you do remove them in October and you put them in cold storage, do they start to get
No, because they don't freeze. So it's actually, I think they are actually converting some of the sugars into like a natural antifreeze.
Right, yeah.
And so it's actually freezing, and in the cooler, one might be able to do that, but like in the cooler, it's 35, so they're never getting quite cold enough.
Never get that, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if just being in the cooler helps that. I would think that they would, have to be still alive.
Alive and in the ground.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Interesting.
I know.
Kennedy is standing in your shadow.
I know.
She's like, I'm a black dog.
I'm so hot.
Let me just be in this one patch of shade.
Bella's out in the sun.
Yep.
She's like, I'm reflecting it. It's not a big
We used to
deal.
have a black goat and a white goat, and it was the opposite. The black goat always laid in the sun, and the white goat always laid in the shade. I was like, what is going on? The laws of physics tell me you should be doing something different, but no.
But I kind of feel like goat breeds, they're from like some of those hot climates,
It was always so confusing. Every time you looked, you're like, okay, if you're happy, I'm happy, but geez Louise. Yeah, so I don't know if you want to see really for vegetable farmers, where it's at is the wash pack, just because that's where you spend a lot of your time.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we'd be glad to show you
experience it.
We have a gorge in the back, and I'll be honest, we don't make it out as often as we. I mean, the water is so deep, it's inaccessible, but it is a lovely spot, and it's lots of trilliums.
Oh wow, like
in the spring.
like the white trilliums, or
some red as well, but mostly the white.
Nice.
But it's not a spot we actually managed to spend a lot of time. Oh yeah, this is our prone weeder. This was the concession to both being over 40. So this tool you lie on and you weed or plant, and you drive
lie
it.
on it?
You drive it with your feet.
What?
So I put this extra shade on depending where the sun is, because it's not that comfortable to lie in the sunshine, but so I can.
Sandra, this is like your idea for driving a car.
So you just lie and you can work, and then you drive with your feet, and you can weed or pick or whatever. So yeah, so this is
Who made this thing?
This one was actually made by a farmer up in Vermont.
Oh my God! Is it like a DIY thing, or is it like people actually manufacture this?
He's a manufacturer in the off season, because he.
But there are other
didn't
brands
have
too.
enough work, yeah. I mean, there's this one. I think we liked better than the other model that we were thinking about buying.
That's fun.
Yeah. That said, when we bought it, we thought it was important that two people could use it, but almost always just one of us uses it. So there are one-person models that we could have bought, but we were like, we need a two-person. But honestly, we don't really hardly. Sometimes my dad and I all weed together, but Matthew and I rarely do. So yeah. But it's great. I mean, to lay in the shade, you can listen to a podcast and you can weed or plant. It's really pretty awesome, because we found the older we get, the less fun it is to stand up and squat 8,000 times a day. So.
It's quiet.
There's little solar panels. Sometimes we do charge the batteries, but they charge it pretty well. We put those on, but a lot of models do come with. That's a thing that a lot of models do. So yeah, so that's been really fun.
I know, it is really. Again, like these are the things that you start to think about, and you're like, when you're starting to think, oh, like I want to be doing this until I'm 60, 70, 80. No, totally.
Right.
Totally.
Let's go up see the pond. The what's left of the pond.
First pond.
Well, there's bees on our farm, but they actually are kept by someone else, so it's so great for us. We get pollination.
So do they collect it for honey? Oh, nice.
Yep.
Do you lease your land, or is it just kind of like a friendly thing?
They pay us in honey,
That's so nice.
which is great. I recently learned to make mead.
Gold. How do you make mead with
I
it?
recently learned to make mead, so that's been fun too. So you can see Matthew.
Oh my God, look at the frogs.
Matthew's feet would have been wet in the spring. This is where the water started.
Wow.
And
Hopefully we left enough in there for the fish.
we
but
try,
there's not much in there.
Yeah. Wow, so this just goes to show you how much rain we actually need here, huh? Does this get filled by anything else other than rainwater? No.
Rainwater.
Yeah.
It's
Pretty much.
It takes a while for it to refill. There's no stream
Yeah.
feeding it. So
I love how the frogs jump across the surface.
They are. Yeah, look at that.
And lots of dragonflies and damselflies here.
Well, you created a different habitat, you know? Mm-hmm. It's like, I want some frogs.
And the bees love to drink right at the shallows. Like, it's really fun to see that they are.
Yeah.
So.
Well, amazing. I mean, I love...
Let's go that way, actually.
Yeah. I love seeing all the inner workings of what you're doing here. That is, you know, to see it in operation on a scale that you're doing it at, and a scale that seems reasonable for you, you know what I mean?
Right. A people-sized scale.
A people-sized scale. And is this your own personal gardens, like the ones that you have around your house?
yeah, we're trying to do a little bit better about gardening this year.
This is my earring
Farmers,
garden.
we're not gardeners.
We grow these little mini gourds, and I like to make earrings with them. You can see this is what they look like. They're the perfect size for earrings. Here's a little earring gourd.
Oh my
They're the
God. Do they not get any larger?
That's it.
my
I was thinking I
goodness.
should hang an earring right next to that one because there's a very convenient hook. You can see what they look like when they're
Yeah.
dried and turn into an earring. But yeah, so they're really, they're looking very dry.
Yes, these gourds are. Last year these gourds were really.
Oh, well, last
Running
year
everywhere.
was an exceptional year for rain,
Yeah.
so.
We were finding gourds in the lawn like months afterwards, you know, because you like mow it and then you're like, oh, there's another gourd. And then it froze and we were like, look at all these gourds we didn't pick up.
And this is where you do your
This
potting.
is the greenhouse. So in the spring, it's full of plants. We have some heated tabletops. Actually, it's kind of cool. Somebody has a greenhouse or a situation at home. This, we have two things we heat with and both work pretty great. This table is heated by water pipes.
Oh, okay.
That are plumbed to this hot water heating tank.
Right.
So in the winter, the only heat on this table is these pipes full of hot water.
Huh.
And then at night we cover them with a row cover to keep the heat in. So we're heating like just this much of our greenhouse.
Yeah.
And they're pretty warm right now. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's pretty warm out. And then this table is heated by just rope lights, not LED.
Oh my goodness, that's
And
crazy.
you wouldn't believe it. Somebody told me that. And I was like, that's not gonna work. It
Yeah.
really works. It's like amazing.
Wow, that's
so
like
we
a
just
cheap purchase
yeah,
too.
yeah, really cheap.
Wow.
So so this is just a piece of insulation board, and then you can see it's just a rope light.
Oh my God.
And then
Such a good hack.
And then we cover this with, if it's real cold, the row cover and plastic, and if it's really really cold, sometimes a second piece of one or the other or both.
Yeah.
So we would never put tomatoes on just this table. We're too nervous. Might not be quite warm enough. So we try to put all of our tomatoes on this table, which we know we can control the temperature better. But this has been great. We put out anything that's not a frost, like any kind of lettuce, broccoli, any spring stuff can go on here. So
Yeah.
that's been great. And as you can see right now, we're drying garlic under a row cover or shade cloth.
Yep. Amazing.
Yeah, so not much in here this time of year. We've got our fennel, we've got the winter kale that we'll pick all winter, some spicy mix plantings coming on, but this is not the busiest time of year for greenhouse work.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you so much for sharing your operation.
Oh,
with
you're
us.
so
This is,
welcome.
so nice to see, and really nice that we could actually also come out and like support your CSA.
If you're learning from and enjoying the videos that we produce here at Flock, consider liking, subscribing, hitting the notifications button, and even tipping. As you can see, your support and viewership does really make a difference. We're reinvesting 10% of our Google AdSense proceeds back into community projects, which is matched by our partners over at Espoma Organic. Thank you again for your support, and we'll see you in the next video.